We'll be discussing today the power of developing your own personal brand. As mentioned, I'm Toby Teo. I'll be your host this evening, and I work in the Enterprise Solutions Consulting Corps department within KPMG. I've been at the firm now for about a year and a half, and I'm based in the Canary Wharf office in London. By the end of today's event, we hope you'll have a better understanding of the ingredients of an impactful personal brand, how to leverage that brand to leave strong first impressions with hiring managers and new colleagues, and the top tips for navigating a professional services firm like KPMG and unlocking new career opportunities. So some of you may not even know what KPMG really is or what we do. KPMG in the UK is a part of a global network of member firms that offers audit, tax, legal, consulting, deal advisory, and technology transformation services. And I have the pleasure to announce that we are joined today by 4 of my KPMG colleagues who work in different areas of the business I just mentioned. They'll be sharing stories from their own career journeys and how a sense of personal brand has helped them build strong professional relationships and succeed at their time here at KPMG. We'll also have plenty of time at the end of the session for Q&A, as mentioned, so please make a note of any questions you might have and put them in the chat, and we'll be able to address them at the end. So, coming on to what personal branding is and how we can define that. To get us started, here's how we'd like to define personal branding this evening. Personal branding is the process of defining and promoting what you stand for as an individual. It is the culmination of the experiences, skills, and values that differentiate you and an individual. With this definition in mind, I'd like to go over to our panel for our first discussion. Tanway, would you be able to kick off by introducing yourself and then share your tips for how an audience can start to define their own personal brand?
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can get me well.
Yeah,
Right.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. So I'm Kanwi Tabot. I joined the firm KPMG about some 5.5 months ago, so I'm pretty new. I work within the powered HR department, and the journey has been smooth so far. Right. So personally, I would say, if I could put it in a phrase, I would say my personal brand is that drive for excellence that I have in everything that I do. I think it all began with it's a journey really, and it began by me by just hating mediocrity. I didn't like to see people doing certain things in a certain way right from my young age. I didn't like maybe someone choosing a hard way to do something instead of using, for instance, technology to facilitate that thing. You know, taking notes with a pen when you can use, I don't know, notes in your phone, and then you can easily erase it without any havoc. So I was that person that would always strive for excellence, you know, in everything that people are doing, and I would always want the best. And I later on realized that throughout my life, I had the skill of attention to detail. So I paid the most attention to the least details in every task that I'm given, so that the work should be excellent. And so throughout my life, I've seen that that's the way I've worked. And I think I just discovered that that was my personal brand later on. And I've seen it work throughout my, I would say, my short career so far. I'll leave the examples for later on. So I think that's what I can say about my personal brand so far.
Thanks so much, Kanway. Already I'm seeing from your personal branding a very powerful statement. I hate mediocrity. So that's a mindset and branding I can already see evident in yourself. Passing over to Kumi, let's hear her take on the same topic.
Hi everyone, I'm Kumi, so I'm an assistant manager within Deal Advisory. My advice would be, well, it sounds obvious, but you need to get it right, your personal brand from the beginning, because it can impact if you're given the right opportunities or the wrong opportunities. And by wrong, I mean opportunities that aren't really aligned with your skills and values. So I would say to do that, your personal brand needs to be unique to you and then verify with multiple people. So when I joined KPMG, I gathered all the positive feedback from people. This is the only time I would focus on like positive and ignoring the negatives, but I looked at all the positive feedback and I started to look at common patterns. And I got stuff like proactive, organized, easy to talk to. And afterwards, I made sure that every single project I worked on, I made sure that I left that impression for people. So when it came to like performance reviews and when senior members of our team are talking about me and assessing me for my year-end review, if someone's talking about me on a specific theme, my personal brand, other people can verify it because they might have worked with me. And even if people hadn't worked with me before, because they see multiple people agree with the point like my manager is saying, they would start to subconsciously believe, okay, that's who I am. And if I didn't have like a personal brand and I wasn't distinguished, people would have had so many different opinions. And it's kind of like the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. If everyone's saying something different, then the meeting wouldn't have come out with like a clear conclusion of who Kumi is. So I would say like another piece of advice, focus on a few key things that you can be really good at and it will make you stand out.
Really, really great advice, Kumi. I think what you've just messaged, or you sent across there, is the power of consistency, and preaching a consistent message will help elevate your personal brand. At the end there, you also mentioned about focusing on a few things. Do you have any tips for the audience on how they focus and get to those few things?
It can either just be things that if you ask people to like just talk about you, what they see, like what makes you stand out, I think you can just pick those things, and because if everyone's seeing it, then you'll probably be naturally good at it. Or something that you want people to see you as, so you can like decide yourself. But I think it'll be easier for you to speak to other people and get their perspective.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really great. And to get a different perspective, heading over to Tolu. Tolu, could you give your take on what personal branding means to you?
Yes, I can. Hi guys, I'm Tolu and I'm a graduate in our IT audit team at KPMG. And I think what personal branding means to me is ultimately who you are. And in the corporate world, who you are is essentially made up of what you do and the values you hold. So I think it's really important to remember that when you're working in your department, so for example, I do audit, and I have to always remember that there's hundreds, if not even thousands of people within KPMG that do the same role as me. So as Toby and Kumi said, you have to kind of do something that differentiates you from other people. So as well as doing audit, I kind of focused on doing CSR in the African and Caribbean network within KPMG. And I started doing that when I joined, which was 2.5 years ago, because I knew that doing audit, kind of when it comes to our end of year review, I need to have something kind of more that differentiates me from all the other people in my cohort to say that, look, I've been doing this, but also whilst I've been working, I've been doing this on the side as well. And I think that can really go so far up to a point of when you're networking with people more senior to you. Of course, networking, you want to have you want to kind of really want to gain information and experience and hear their story, but it's also important to share about what you've done and share how the journey you've kind of been on since joining the firm. And if you have just kind of been working your day-to-day role, not to say that you won't have anything to say, but you might not have as much to say as somebody who's been doing something outside of their role. And then just to pick up on the values that you hold as well. So if, for example, you do audit, but there's been an example where you've had to kind of show courage or show integrity or show excellence whilst doing your role in audit, that is still something to share. So that is kind of the same, with the same point that can help you kind of network with someone that can help you kind of share your own story, share the journey you've been on without necessarily doing something outside of audit. So I think personal brand is just ultimately having a experience or a value that's really unique to you, something that you can share with people that other people might not be able to say.
Really, really top answer there. I totally agree with your point there. In the corporate world, it's easy to, I guess, get a bit complacent, and like the message we've been hearing, some of the stuff is part of the day job. So what else can you add on top to enhance your personal brand? Thank you so much, Tolu, for that answer. And lastly, by no means least, handing over to Ose for her opinion on personal branding.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Osse. I am the HR director for the audit practice, and I have been with the firm for about 5 years now. And that's right. After a few short months at the organisation, we start referring to it as the firm, which I always found very bizarre when I first joined. But you get used to it very quickly. So reflecting on what personal brand means to me, I think it is all about operating with authenticity. So all of the external data tells us that having diverse teams really does lead to better outcomes for organizations. Now, I don't think I'm a terrible person. Would I like Beyonce's lifestyle? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. But I think I'm pretty proud of how far I have come in my career. But what I would say is I don't want a cookie cutter version of myself. I value the diversity that other people bring. And my motto to my team is always, I want you to operate with purpose, not perfection. And that really is what your personal brand is, just being you. Now, that's not to say that I'm expecting you to rock up to the office in your pajamas, for example, but I do think it's important that you make an authentic impression with colleagues that works for you in your own way, because it's really important that you come across as authentically as possible. So that's my experience of a personal brand.
Thank you so much, Jose. Authenticity is key, and I think it's a message that's resonated from everyone's advice so far, and one that I really agree with as well. So swiftly transitioning on to perhaps our next question. Now that we've uncovered some of the ingredients of a personal brand, I'd like to ask you about your advice for using your personal brand in conversations, especially with colleagues or in interviews. How can our audience use their personal brand to get ahead in the workplace? And since Osse was last, I'm going to let her go first this time. So over to you, Osse.
Thank you. So I guess for me, it's being really clear about what you want to get out of a conversation, whether that's in an interview or if you're having a meeting with a colleague. You need to be really, really clear about what you want to get out of it. Is that for you to share personal stories and reflections about yourself and leave an impact with the individual? Is it to find out some more information so that you can make a more informed decision? I think it's really important to be crystal clear about what you want to get out of that conversation. And thinking specifically about interviews, practice being able to share what makes you, that X factor, what is special about you. Practice how you're going to get across in interviews the kind of sweet spot of what makes you an interesting individual. You absolutely should be able to bring examples to life and think about your own personal contribution to making a difference when it comes to kind of Q&As. The thing that I would say is probably most important is sitting in an interview and talking about how amazing you're doing, but not sharing the other side, the truth of development areas. I don't think brings across the best personal brand for anyone. I think you should be really clear about what your strengths are, but also be really honest and open about what your development areas are. The key thing here is to be able to talk to your plan for how you're going to address your development areas. And then finally, the other thing I would mention that I think is really important when it comes to interviews or conversations is evidence doing something over and above your day job, something that sits on your heart that you want to do, that brings you joy, but isn't your day-to-day standard. So is that volunteering at a homeless shelter? Is that thinking about how you can support the local community more? Is that supporting maybe somebody who in your wider friend or family network is more junior than you and helping their development? You want to be able to bring to life things that you are doing outside of your day-to-day. So those would be the tips for me, I think.
What a fantastic arsenal of tips there. That they were awesome. One I'm quite curious to maybe pick up on is the fact that you did the kind of two sides of a coin analogy. We talk about personal branding. Everyone always wants to talk about the good stuff. In the world of interviews and knowing yourself, I think it's a lot of people struggle to say, what am I bad at? Or maybe what are my weaknesses? Do you have any advice for the audience on how maybe they can go about identifying their weaknesses?
Yeah, so you should, I try not to refer to them as weaknesses, by the way, because I think it would be I know I'm going to keep referring to Beyonce. Even Beyonce has some development areas. Okay, she's perfection in my eyes, but I'm sure Jay-Z has some feedback for her. I think it's really, really important that we get comfortable with the uncomfortableness of having development areas. And you should be, when I'm interviewing someone, I find it valuable when an individual is able to say to me, do you know what? Sometimes, even though I have great project management skills, sometimes I don't bring everybody along on the journey. And that's something that I've been working on. And these are 3 things that I'm doing to address it. For me, being able to be honest about your development areas and then how you are going to address it is really important. You don't have to, if you're late for work every single day, that's probably not the greatest development area to talk about. But you might talk about time management and say, actually, one of my key areas for development is time management. And some of the things I am doing to address that includes X, Y, and Z. That to me is the most important thing. But I really do value balance in an interview because I think nobody's perfect. So hope that helps.
Great advice, and thank you for correcting me. Development areas, that's the term to go forward with. So thank you so much for that. Kanwe, to hear your take on this, were you able to share your thoughts with the audience, please?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Right. So personally, I think in order to make the world know your personal brand, in order to put yourself out there, one major thing that you need to do is to be quite proactive. It's true for some of us, like in my case, it was quite difficult to initiate, putting myself out there. Being new to a team, being a graduate, I just had to really learn. So it was quite difficult for me to, make others know my own values and what I can bring to the table. But at some point I had to be proactive to, tell people that, okay, so I love doing this, or I love doing this way. I can do this very well. I'm used to this. It takes time, but you need to get to that point where you're quite proactive at doing that. And it all begins with you actually building a platform of a relationship with the people around you. It starts from there, and then you can easily address them in a way that they will understand. Personally, I remember that when I just began working with my current team, I just supported in change and comms, although there was a plethora of other things I could do. I remember at some point, I just, after I built a relationship with my direct supervisor, I just told him, look, I really love working with data analysis. I've been doing this a lot and I really love it. And I know I can produce results, data analytics reports that are really of good quality. And I showed him certain examples of them and he was quite impressed. He gave me nice feedback and everything. And he started putting me on several other engagements that had to do with data analytics alongside the change and comms I was doing already. So being 5 months into this team and 5 months into the firm, I think that's pretty much, that's a lot. Like my performance manager, for instance, would tell me, you've done too much. Like normally you're not supposed to do this much this time. But I think it began for me being proactive, and it's the friends around me as well that also like pushed me to be that proactive. Otherwise, I would probably not have done that. So it's a lot of things I've said here. So I think it ranges right from you having good friends around you, you having a good environment, and right up to you taking up, the bold step to actually being proactive and putting yourself out there In your case, it might not be in a team. It might be just you being proactive online by showcasing what you stand for. You might have this particular, love for sustainable development. You can go on a podcast and start talking about it. You can have this love for artists, for art. You can go out, you can start talking about it. There's so many things you can do, but I mean, just be proactive and show yourself out there so that the world can actually see your personal brand. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamwe. Lovely answer. Especially the fact that your personal story of showing a lot of courage. It takes courage at any point in your career, but to do so 5 months in as a graduate speaks volumes of your personal brand and what you can do. So really powerful message. Thank you so much. Kumi, how about yourself?
So I would say for interviews, what you wear, your body language, the way your personality comes across, it all ties back to your personal brand. So when it comes to interviews, as well as doing your normal prep, like why you want to work there, what you bring to the table, if you already have like a personal brand that you want to showcase, you need to factor that in when you prep. So as Usha said, practice this beforehand is really important, especially if they ask you about, tell me about yourself. Like that's a key way to put your personal brand across. In the workplace, I would say there are lots of ways to use your personal brand. So some of my colleagues are very active on LinkedIn. So they only post about stories or reshare posts or post themselves about stuff that relates to their personal brand, their values and what they align with. And so every time they do so, people inside and outside of their workplace are reminded of their personal brand consistently. And even if you're not on social media or you don't really care about it that much, you could in the workplace even write like articles or like share like stuff within email chains or group chats at work just to like showcase that as well.
Really good point. I guess it's easy to get wrapped up in personal brand being stuff that you show in a kind of physical way or in the presence of someone. When we live in an era where social media is key, you're so right. Like people get known as the LinkedIn guy or girl, right? And that sets the precedent already before anyone's even spoken to you. So I think that's a really good point. Thanks, Kumi. Tolu, what about yourself?
Yeah, so because a few people have touched on kind of the interview process, I wanted to really focus on personal brand in the workplace and how to kind of leverage that. And I think it goes back to what I said in my last answer, where I said that when you're networking, it's not just a one-way street, it's kind of a two-way street, that you want to be also giving experiences and sharing your journey as much as you want to kind of be hearing and getting advice from the person you're talking to. And I think the only way you can do that, as I said before, is if you're either doing stuff or if you're kind of holding values close to your heart, which you can then speak of. And I think it really comes down to, so within KPMG, I think, as I said, I kind of work within the CSR pillar in the ACN, but my team is IT audit and the majority of my team aren't in the ACN. So they won't know about the work that I do unless I tell them. So it comes down to, you've got to kind of get rid of that thought or that aspect of you're showing off or you're telling them things that they might not want to know, and you just got to do it anyway. So I think sometimes if the African Caribbean Network send out an email to say what we've been doing or what we've been involved in, I might just forward that to my team just to share with them, just to tell them exactly what I've been doing. Because if you think about it, it's my performance manager at the end of the year that is going to kind of rate me and rank me. And if he doesn't know all the stuff I'm doing outside of IT audit, then he's not really going to give me a true reflection. It's not going to really be what I deserve unless he kind of finds out. So I think in that sense, you have got to just be bold and just kind of really share with your team exactly what you are doing, exactly how you're doing it, even if it's something that doesn't kind of concern them at all. But if it's something that concerns you, you've kind of just got to do it. And I think I can say for myself, like from kind of being in the African Caribbean Network and from kind of holding KPMG values like close to my heart, I've had the chance to interview a education influencer and the CEO of KPMG, just kind of from doing these things which aren't relevant to IT audit at all. But then I also made sure that I actually share what I'm doing with my team, with the IT audit team, so they know, and so that I can be kind of fully not necessarily rewarded from that, but just so they know that at the end of the year when they're doing my performance and things like that, so everyone's aware of it, and it's not a case where I'm kind of not getting the true recognition that I deserve, which I think is a big issue in the workplace, because obviously not everybody's going to know about everything you're doing. So I think, yeah, you just got to completely get rid of that aspect of showing off or flexing or anything like that, and just really let your team know exactly what you're doing. Make it a two-way street. Tell them exactly everything you're involved in, and yeah, just be bold.
Really, really good point, Tolu. I guess one of the biggest things a lot of us have to overcome is, okay, great, you've built your personal brand. Now it's delivering. Oh, not sure if there's okay. But what I was saying is when there's you've done a good job of building a personal brand, it's great to actually show off it. So you've done all that hard work in identifying who you are and what you want to stand for. You've got to be your own biggest fan. So really great message, Tolu. And it actually quite nicely segues into the next and last question I'd like to throw at the panel. So thank you for sharing all of your experiences. Our final talking point is more of a general one, but like I said, links quite nicely to what Tolu was saying. But what advice can you give our attendees today at the start of their career who might be interested in pursuing a career at a large professional services firm like KPMG? Are there any experiences that you can share that would be helpful and really help someone thrive in the environment that we work in? And on this, I'd love to pass over to Kumi first, if she could share her thoughts.
I would say when you join like a firm, find like 3 people. So one person that's just above your level, so you can ask silly questions that you might be embarrassed to ask other people about. Then I'd say find 2 other people that are more senior. It could be a partner or director, and someone that can give you like a more senior like perspective on things and career progression, and you can ask more like professional questions. And I would say with the person that's like just above you, you literally follow in their footsteps, keep bombarding them. It would be good if like you're really like good friends with them as well, so you'll be more comfortable to do that. And then for the senior people, maybe when you first join, set up a coffee chat every month to ask questions, and then as you get more comfortable in the firm, then just change it to every 3 months, but still have that regular contact. I did that, and it really helped me with the tips that they gave me, and I was able to implement it in my work, and it really reflected in my performance reviews.
Preaching to the choir, because that's exactly what I do. I really like that kind of 360-degree support circle you can do. It's very easy to go and pick the top dogs, the partners, directors, but you're probably going to develop and grow more with the people who are nearer you. So getting both supports is really good, and I'm sure they all factor into your personal brand. Tolu, would you like to share your thoughts with us next, please?
Yep, sure. I think the best way to sort of navigate any company at the start is definitely by joining kind of a network or something outside of work. I think leading on from what Kumi said about finding people around you, you want people around you that are within your department that can advise you on exactly the work you're doing, but you also probably want someone that's kind of not within the team that you work in, that can advise you on just kind of general life within the company, and that you can speak to about things that you don't directly work on, and you kind of have maybe a bit more of an informal relationship there. So yeah, I say definitely join a network. That's probably the easiest way to kind of expand your network, expand the kind of people that are around you that you talk to. And then also I'd say this kind of is before joining a firm, but I think you really just got to make sure you're applying to somewhere you actually want to go, and somewhere you actually know. So for example, just to share my kind of story, I was after uni, I did economics, and I kind of knew I wanted to go into audit, and I was applying to lots and lots of different kind of companies that do audit, and lots of different professional services companies. And it was only when I came to KPMG on a 3-day placement that I actually kind of spoke to people and went around and saw what they do, and kind of learned about KPMG outside of audit as well. I learned about the networks. I was first introduced to the African and Caribbean network, and it was only then when I kind of really knew that this is somewhere that I wanted to join. Before that, I was just kind of looking for any random company that would take me. But I think if I did actually go to any of the companies that I'd applied to before, I would have very quickly realized that I would have probably been quite unhappy there, and I probably wouldn't have been quite as well suited to kind of like the kind of life outside of work at those companies, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think you really just got to make sure that you're going to somewhere that you actually want to go to. And I think you students are doing the right thing by joining kind of sessions like this, where you actually find out more about KPMG and find out if it is kind of aligned to you as much as you think it is. But yeah, on top of this, I'd say just message people on LinkedIn. People are always happy to kind of share their experiences and share about the companies they work with. And again, just ask lots of questions once you do join. Just ask kind of lots of random silly questions that you might be embarrassed to ask, but that will genuinely help you kind of progress and know if this is somewhere that you want to stay.
Thank you so much, Tolu. Totally agree. What you've even pointed out there is some of the prerequisites or some of the stuff you can do before you get to a large firm. And that's just as important as what you do when you get here. And what you said at the end was really valid. Everyone loves talking about themselves. So if you go and ping them on LinkedIn, I'm sure they won't ever say, no, I don't have time for you. And they'll be happy to take your questions. So thank you so much for your input there, Tolu. Kamwe, would you like to go next on your opinion?
Yes, I'm happy to go next. Yeah. So from my side of things, what I can say is, in order to navigate your way through a big firm like KPMG, I think one key term you tend to hear is people map. You should probably create a people map for yourself. On that people map, you know who to go to for every single thing that you want, and you know what you can also give that person back, because it has to be a two-way thing. So I have created mine. I created mine about 2 months ago, and the people that are on my people map range from every single department within KPMG, and I know what they can offer me, and I know what I can offer each of them. And I think that's a big way to start with when you're already in the firm. But in order to join a certain firm like that, I think one of the first things to do really is to go to LinkedIn and stalk that firm, follow people who follow the firm, connect with the key persons from that firm, and try to have the language of the firm, try to dig into the values of that firm, read about the firm, really stalk the firm. And then with time, you begin to know what they really want from you. You begin to know how your skills, how your personal brand matches what this firm wants. And that way you can know the points where you can bring something in, what you can do to actually add into the firm, so that when the interview comes, you know what to say, you know how to act, and you know what you're going to bring. And there's going to be no friction because you have studied the firm enough. So I think that's what I can give as an advice. Just stalk the firm, and once you get in, create a people map, and you know the strategic people you can go to every time. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Kamwe. Yeah, I love the term and concept of a people map. You don't have to go and take on everyone. Pick your people and pick them very well, and they can really help you thrive and succeed in a firm like ours, or whichever working environment you find yourself in. And also yourself, what's your take on this?
So I would agree with everything that Kamwe, Tolu, and Kumi have said. I fully agree. The only additional thing I would say is, don't be afraid to apply for an organization like this. So when I was a graduate, I specifically decided not to apply to any of the big four, to any of the law firms, to any of the financial services organizations, because I thought, they're probably not going to want someone like me in their organization. I had some real biases about what a big four professional services organization might look like. Years later, an ex-manager of mine said, I actually think you'd be really suitable for the big four. And I said, absolutely not, it's not going to work. I don't think I'd be the right fit. And it's been an exceptional career journey for me, like exceptional. And so the one thing I always tell people is, like, take that step into fear. If you're interested in applying, but you think, oh, it might not work out, or it might not be quite right for me, just do it. Challenge yourself and do it. So if you're considering applying for someone like this, and you're on the fence, just apply and see what you get.
Thank you so much, Jose. Resonates with me too. I didn't start my career journey in consulting. I came from industry, so I had some biases as well of my own. But it's really reassuring to hear your take on that. And like, maybe to give a bit more of an impression of KPMG as a whole, when it comes to overcoming your biases or creating a atmosphere that supports you, how have you found your experience with KPMG from a well-being and, you know, really empowering you to come as you are, if you had that original bias in the first place?
I'm happy to go. So at the start, I talked about operating with authenticity and purpose, not perfection. I cannot be anything other than, it's too much hard work to be anything other than myself. And so my well-being and my work-life balance is really, really, really important to me. A lot of the facilitators here have talked about finding your people. Find your people. You know, you want to come into work and have a solid network of friends. I have really, really, really good friends at KPMG. You're going to be spending a lot of time at work. You want to make it an enjoyable experience. So find the moments that help you feel more balanced from a well-being perspective. But don't be afraid to be that voice also that says, do you know what, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to start a network. I'm going to set up a session where a bunch of people can get together on an evening. We are very, very supportive of people genuinely bringing their whole selves to work. And so if there is something that you're interested in or that you want to integrate within your life, do not be afraid to chat about it and say, actually, this is really important to me. I'm going to make sure that this balances with what's going on at work. Because it can sometimes be busy, particularly in audit. We have what we call a busy season, where it's a bit busier, I think, probably between January and March. So kind of our busiest period. And you're spending a lot of time with your work colleagues. You want to make that time enjoyable. And so I'd say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to put things in place to help create some balance. And then can I just touch on imposter syndrome? Because I feel like there's been a couple of questions on that, and then I'll keep quiet, I promise. So I had and still do have a huge amount of imposter syndrome. And there have been a couple of comments that I've seen in the chat there from individuals that said, actually, as a Black woman, if I'm talking about my development areas, I don't want to come across as a certain way. And so how do I navigate that when you overlay imposter syndrome? The one thing I would say, and I still have imposter syndrome, I think it's natural. It happens to so many of us. The one thing I would say is every month I reflect back on what I have achieved, what I've done really, really well, and what I've maybe not done so well. And I write in I have a little book here that I write a whole bunch of stuff in. I write in a little book. And being able to balance the stuff that you've done well with the tiny list of things that you potentially haven't done so well allows you to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So it is really difficult, and particularly when you've got imposter syndrome, it's really difficult to then start writing this list of all of the areas that are, maybe not your strongest kind of focus areas. But what I would say is pick two. Just say to yourself, I'm gonna write down 10 strengths, and I'm gonna write down 2 development areas once a month. You'll soon get very, very used to the fact that I am not doing a bad job, and people will see that. You also cannot be responsible for somebody else's perception of you. You just have to do the very, very, very best you can. Get yourself the right people, get yourself coaches, friends, be honest with yourself, be honest with others, and that is the best you can do. I hope that helps from an imposter syndrome and development perspective.
It certainly helped me, Jose. So I'm sure the audience loved all those nuggets of wisdom. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our panelists for sharing those experiences. Now we'd like to open the floor to some of your questions, and we have been receiving some of the questions you've already been pasting into the chat. So if you still have some, please keep them coming. And if appropriate, and you have specific questions for one of our panelists, please make sure to call them out. But to kick off with some that we've already had, this one is for Kumi. It sounds like when you were talking about one of the first points that you've used mentors to feedback on some of your strengths. Would you say that this is one person in your department or more? And what do you look for in this kind of insight?
It was definitely multiple people. So anytime I've worked with people like on a project, after every project, I ask people just to give me feedback. So I need insight from different people because one person, like one perspective isn't enough, especially for self-development. So it was like multiple people.
Yeah, and I think that connects quite nicely to the people map that Kamwe mentioned earlier as well, that you need. It takes a village, right? That's the saying a lot of us, I'm sure, will know. Pointing another question to Kamwe himself. What are 3 effective branding tips for someone who is shy and finds putting themselves out there quite challenging, whether that be online or in person?
I think it's right to direct that question to me because I'm shy as well. But I'm on this platform right now. So I think that says a lot. So one way you can actually overcome that is by actually going out there, just as I'm doing right now, one step at a time. You might get a chance to speak in a smaller setting, 5-10 people. Go ahead, take it, make the mistakes. It's fine. And obviously, when you have good friends around you, they see those mistakes and they know who you are, and they see that that's even an improvement on your person. So they celebrate that, you see, and then you move on to a bigger setting. So you take it as slowly as possible, but do it, just do it. You lose more if you actually hesitate. You lose time, you lose maybe opportunities, you lose a lot. So just focus on doing it rather than focusing on a bad result after you've done it, because the result will never be actually bad because you already doing it is something really positive. So I think you should be more bold, just do it. I think as short as it is, yeah, just do it. As I'm doing.
Sorry, Kamwe, one of my many flaws is interrupting people. But can I add one more thing to that? Because I fully agree. Sometimes you just have to kind of take the plunge and go for it. Probably about 15 years ago, one of my performance managers pulled me aside and said, you never say anything in meetings. Like you, at the end, there'll be a meeting of 10 people, and at the end of the meeting, you'll say, oh, I've got some comments I want to make that I want to share with you. And she said to me that the reason I am in that meeting is because I have value. I have something valuable to add. And so I go into every single meeting thinking, I've got something valuable to add, and so I'm going to make sure I add it. And then the second thing I do is if you ever get this sense of nervousness or imposter syndrome, or I don't know what I'm doing in this meeting, set yourself a challenge. It can be as simple as I'm going to ask 3 questions and give 3 opinions in this 90-minute meeting. And even if everybody leaves the meeting and thinks, what the hell has she just said? You've gotten comfortable with operating in the uncomfortableness. And that's what's helped me get through the last few kind of years is I set myself a challenge as I go into each meeting, even if it's starting with, I'm just going to ask 3 questions.
Thank you. Thanks for adding that on, I'll say. And thank you so much, Kamwe. It was with your Just Do It. We're not sponsored by Nike, but I really like the delivery you were giving there. And I'll say I totally agree with what you're saying too. Some really good advice, and it's like I'm learning myself, which is great. Tolu, one for you, having come through the graduate scheme, and this one's more about the DNA of the application process. So during the recruitment process, what do you think firms such as ours or others out in the market, what do they look for in the CV or application process? And what are the key points one should lay out when applying for jobs?
I think it's really important to make your CV kind of relevant to the job that you are applying for. So, or the role that you're applying for actually. So if it is kind of IT audit or or recruitment or another pillar, you want to kind of make it, there's got to be something on your CV that kind of shows that you are interested in this. And that doesn't mean that you have to have experience in this role already, but you've got to kind of make it clear that this is something that you kind of know about a little bit at least. And then I think as well as that, it's just good to add what you do kind of outside of work or outside of school. As we said earlier, your kind of personal brand is who you are, everything about you. So if it's that you play sports or you do music or any kind of interests or hobbies outside of work, you want to show that you're more than just this person who can do the job. You want to show everything who you are. So I think just kind of bring everything to the table, kind of make it clear, and just kind of make it relevant. And then, but then also add more stuff to make it clear that you're not just this person who's going for this role. But I think from a HR point of view, also it might be good to also go to for this question just to add.
I honestly wouldn't add anything extra. I think you've explained it exceptionally well. I think being you is for me the biggest personal brand that you could have. So you just, for me, it's just about you do not need to be perfect. Just operate with purpose. And yeah, just that's it really. I think you've covered it perfectly, Tolu. To be honest, I won't repeat anything that you've said.
Thanks.
Thanks both. Really good answers. I'll take one very quickly because I've seen it's been directed to me in the chat, and any of my fellow non-graduates can also speak in. And this one's about making a transition from industry, as we call it, into the world of consulting and what it's like. Similar to Osei, I got told by a lot of people at my previous employer that I was built for consulting, which I didn't know what that meant. And honestly, like a lot of things in life, like Canway have said, like a lot of people, if you're ready for a step and you're thinking about it, kind of act on it, because it's the whole mantra of don't live life with regrets. You only really learn from experiences. So whether that be late in your career, at the start of your career, I think there's always a time that's adequate and relevant for you to make the switch. And the consulting world that KPMG is in has a lot to offer, and you'll pick up a lot of skills. So if you're thinking about it, do the research, take your time. It's not like a instant decision you have to make. I deliberated for a long time, and I had a friend who was at KPMG, so I picked his brains to death before I even thought about it, and then I made the move. So take your time, look at it from all angles, and then if your gut instinct is on the fence, I'd say always go for it and then see what happens afterwards. And Kumi, you got something to add on that?
Can I add? I think when you're a grad, it's easy to apply just loads of firms when you're trying to look for a job. But when you're already experienced, you have to be very careful, because you have to focus exactly where you want to go and do your research before you just apply anywhere. So I transitioned from an engineering company, then I went to KPMG, and I think when you're already working, you have to think about like holiday leave. You're going to be using that for like interview prep, or you will have limited time compared to when you're a grad. To just be very careful, focus on exactly where you want to apply for, why, do your research before wasting your time. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Kumi. That's really useful, and I think I totally agree with everything you just called out there. I'm conscious of time, so I'll try and squeeze in two more questions or so. And one being kind of linked to all of this early stage aspects as opposed to late stage in your career. What would be your advice to individuals applying as early stage professionals? So we're talking 3 years or less, kind of maybe links to what Kumi, you just mentioned. How do we make sure our application stands out? I'll leave that to the floor if anyone wants to answer that instead of me just picking on someone, or I can do that too. But does anyone have any particular thoughts on that?
It's been a while since I was a graduate, I have to admit. But to me, I think the thing that really stands out when I'm looking at anybody's CV or application form is what they have contributed. So have you gone, and I think I spoke about this a little bit earlier, what have you done outside of the day-to-day, whether that's outside of the day-to-day from a college perspective, uni perspective, work, what are you doing to help broaden your learning, your development, your skills and experience? You absolutely should be able to kind of summarize that and in your CV or application form. And you want to be able to be succinct too. I know I'm not a very succinct person, but you do want to be able to get across your message in a really, really, really clear way. And then finally, just be really careful. I mean, this sounds very basic, but the number of application forms and CVs that come through where somebody has not checked their spelling, they've not reviewed their grammar, sentences don't have full stops at the end. To a lot of organizations, they'll just immediately go, that person does not have the care and attention required to do the basics. So I would say literally just get someone to sense check your work before you submit anything.
Thanks so much. I'll say it's often the simple messages are the ones people forget. So definitely do that. And in the world of consulting services and firms, attention to detail is everything, as you've heard from all the panelists. I'm going to squeeze in one more question for everyone before we close. When speaking about personal brand, how can you assess what to focus on if you wear different hats or work in an industry that focuses on many different areas? Now, this is one we could probably all answer to, because even though we do same jobs, it may be that you're doing it in multiple different sectors for different clients as well. So to the panelists, how do you make sure your brand is perhaps consistent when you're doing so many different things across so many different areas?
I'm happy to go first for this one. I think it probably depends on who you're speaking to. Depending on who you're speaking to, you want to mention things that might be relevant to them or things that you know might interest them. Nothing to say that you can't kind of mention everything that you do, but if it is a lot, then you want to kind of mention the 2 or 3 kind of key things that you know will be interesting to the person you're speaking to, and they'll change kind of on a day-to-day basis depending on who you're talking to. But then again, I think just following on from that as well, you probably don't want to mention everything you're speaking to. You don't want to kind of bombard people with information, and it kind of just is absolutely everything you're doing, but you want to kind of make it relevant, but you also kind of want to make it unique to you as well. So yeah, I think you're just gonna have to assess each situation as its own, not kind of take it all, not kind of just put the same situation in each kind of, if that makes sense. Yeah, you just want to make it all unique. Well, I answer that awfully, but just make it all unique.
No, that's great. And I guess, Kamwe, have you got something before we close, just to add on?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think it's important to also know that we grow into this, so we get there. You might not know how to make your personal brand valuable in every single engagement you have, for instance, but you get there. You learn to do it. So when you master your personal brand, at the end of the day, you know how to apply it in different situations, because I think it all begins from you mastering that personal brand. When you know exactly what it is and how you can showcase yourself in it, then you can know how to differentiate where to place it and how to go about it when you're dealing with different people, because it also depends on the personalities of other people you're dealing with. It depends on a lot of things. So I think it goes from you mastering that personal brand of yours, and then you can easily showcase it without any friction. I think, yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will your personal brand. So everything's a journey. So that's all we've had time for today. I want to say a massive thank you to our wonderful panel members for joining us today and sharing in their stories. We hope everyone has enjoyed listening and found the session really useful. If you're interested in your career at KPMG, please head to our website, www.kpmgscareers.co.uk, to find out more about all the roles we offer, including our 2023 roles that we are still recruiting for. You can also follow up on social media and get in touch with the student recruitment team via phone or email as shown on the screen now. We'd also encourage you to sign up to our talent community to hear about career news and events for graduate programs via the QR code shown on the screen. We look forward to hopefully seeing you one day in the near future, and we hope you have a great evening.